Chapter 43 Once Upon a Broken Heart. Jax took an eerily silent step back, leather boots silenced against the stone floors. "You should go," he edged out, fangs lengthening as he spoke. Evangeline became very aware of the blood rushing through her veins and the pounding of her heart. If she ever saw Luz again, she would use a sword. She might not be able to cut off his head, but she would definitely be able to cut him. "Why aren't you leaving?" Jack's nostrils flared, and Evangeline felt another bolt of heat over her pulse, further dimming the brief thrall she'd been under. Jax was not part fallen angel. He was on the verge of becoming something so much worse. She curled her toes inside of her boots, fighting the urge to slowly back away or burst into a run. If Jax bit her, he would change into a vampire. He hated vampires, and she didn't like that much either. But if she left him now, and he found another human before dawn, she didn't know if he'd be able to exert the same level of control he seemed to possess with her. Jax had gone very still. The only parts of him that moved were his pupils dilating until his eyes were nearly full black. Luz's eyes hadn't done that. Then again, Luz hadn't been a fate when he'd been infected. "Do you want to be a vampire?" Evangeline asked. "No," Jax spat. "I don't want to be a vampire, but I do want to bite you." Evangeline's skin went hot all over. Jax grounded his teeth, looking furious at her for still being there. "You should go," he repeated. "I'm not leaving you like this." Evangeline searched the entryway for shackles. "You're not pinning me to a wall," Jax glared. "Do you have a better suggestion?" And a suddenly victory cry echoed below. Another changeling was probably free. The noise sounded as if it was a decent way underground, but Evangeline wondered if the changelings might sense where she was, or if it was somehow aware there was a human near me. How good is your sense of smell?" she asked. Jack's nostrils flared again. "You smell like fear and..." Something unreadable flickered across his face, but whatever he was going to say next became cut off by another sound of below, like thunder racing up the stairs. Without another word, both of them darted for the exit. Outside, the chilly winter night was almost too bright. The moon had come out from hiding behind the clouds to pay peculiar attention to Jax, illuminating his perfect jaw, his long lashes, and the twist of his petulant mouth. He looked like ethereal heartbreak. She kept feeling the urge to turn her head and take just one more glimpse, and she knew it was vampire allure, the inescapable draw of dangerous beauty and power. "Why aren't you running away?" he asked. "Given the way you keep looking at me, I imagine you'll give chase, or you'll find another human who you won't feel guilty about biting." "I wouldn't feel guilty about biting you." Evangeline didn't know if the voice in her head was a threat, a lasp in Jack's control, or just a warning that she was running out of time. "You should go," he repeated. She ignored him and scoured the darkened graveyard once more. A desperate, but possibly inspired idea occurred as Evangeline caught sight of a mausoleum covered in flowering vines, of angel tears that glowed milky white beneath the moon. "There," she pointed toward the structure. "We'll go inside. Families plant angels' tears when they want to protect the bodies of loved ones from demonic spirits." She knew because she'd done it for both her parents. "This mausoleum is covered in the plant, which means there are probably other protections inside, like a gate with a lock to keep the coffin safe." A muscle in Jack's neck throbbed. "You wish to lock me in a coffin?" "Not a coffin, just on the other side of the gates, though only until dawn. I don't need to be locked up. I can control myself." "Then why do you keep telling me to run?" She lifted her eyes to meet Jack's stare. A split second later, Jax had her pinned against the closest tree. Her back hit the wood. His fevered chest pressed to hers, and his hands went to her throat, burning fire hot against her skin. "Jax," Evangeline gasped, "let me go." He moved away as quickly as he grabbed her. She slumped against the tree from the force of his release. When she righted herself, he was stalking toward the crypt. Evangeline rubbed her neck as she followed. He hadn't held her that tightly, but her skin still felt scorched from the touch of his hands. "I thought vampires were supposed to be cold, and Jax was always cold." "Vampire venom is hot, especially when they're hungry," Jax rasped, as he yanked open the door to the mausoleum. As she suspected, this chamber had been built by the superstitions. Ever-lit torches clung to the walls, providing some warmth and casting a glow on an excellent floor-to-ceiling iron gate that separated any would-be visitors from the four stone coffins on the opposite side of it. "What now?" Jack said roughly. Evangeline quickly approached the gate. She didn't recognize all the protective iron symbols that had been worked into the design, But the bars looked thick enough to hold Jax, at least for several more hours until the sun decided to rise. She wished the lock on the gate was stronger, but it would have to do. "Do you see a key hanging from the wall?" she asked. "No." Jack's voice was tight, then barely audible. "Try your hands. Stab one of your fingers to draw blood and ask the door to open." Evangeline spun around. Jax was pressed against the furthest wall, skin a painful shade of pale white. She didn't make the mistake of meeting his eyes again, but one glance at his face and it was clear he was barely holding himself back. She'd been planning to ask if he was trying to get her to spill blood, but she thought better of wasting more time. Breaking her finger on one of the iron gate's sharper designs, she drew a drop of blood and quickly pressed it to the lock. "Open, please." It worked magic fast. The lock split and the door swung wide, and Evangeline's jaw dropped. "How did you know that would work?" she asked. Jax moved too quickly for Evangeline to see. "This isn't the time or place to talk about it," he said from the other side of the gate, and then he slammed it shut. The lock she just opened closed with a tiny click, making her painfully aware how little stood between her and Jax. He seemed mindful of it as well. He willingly entered the cage, but now he regarded the lock like a thief, contemplating all the ways he could break it. Chapter 44. Once Upon a Broken Heart. If Jax decided he wanted to break free of his prison, Evangeline doubted it would take much effort. She needed to find a way to distract him. She could question him about something he found interesting. She wanted to ask him more about the lock and why her blood had opened it, but he already shot the subject down. She also wondered if she already knew the answer, if her ability to magically open the lock had something to do with the Valerie Arch. When Apollo had told her about the prophecy that had locked the arch, he said that once every line of it was fulfilled, it would create a key that would open the arch. What if she was that key? Could it be possible? Or was it just that all the wild events of tonight would finally get into Evangeline and give her delusions of magical wonder? Only, it didn't feel like delusion as she thought back to every time she stepped through an arch. All of them had whispered to her words that made much more sense if she was this prophesied key. "We're so pleased you found us. We've been waiting for you. You could have unlocked me as well." An uncomfortable thrill kicked through her. She didn't want anything to do with the Valerie Arch. She definitely didn't want to be its key, even if its ability had saved her life just now. Although, if she wanted to stay alive, she had to keep Jax occupied. Fortunately, Evangeline was not at loss for questions. There was one in particular that had been gnawing at her for a while. "Tell me what happened between you and the princess from the Meridian Empire, the one Chaos and Lala mentioned earlier. Don't tell her." "No." Jack's voice was pure bravado. "I don't want to talk about her, ever." This subject would be perfect. Earlier, Jax had merely flinched and then quickly masked his expression whenever the princess was mentioned. But either he was having issues with control or the vampire venom was making his emotions even stronger. Evangeline could once again feel the pressure of Jack's glare, but it was no longer on her neck or on her paws. It was dancing heat all over her. "Tough luck, Jax." Evangeline folded her arms across her chest as he prowled back and forth inside his cage. "You need something to distract you, so you're going to talk about Princess Donatella. I don't care if you tell me how much you hate her or how much you love her. You can sing verses about how pretty she is or the color of her hair." Jax made a strangled sound that might have some entranced cousin of a laugh. "She's not the kind of girl you're singing about." And yet something in his voice shifted, softened, and eventually had an oddly uncomfortable sensation that he actually would have sung songs about this girl. "The first time I met her, she threatened to throw me from a sky carriage." "And do you like her for that?" Evangeline asked. "I just threatened to kill her." He said it as if they'd been flirting. "This is a terrible love story, Jax." "Who said it was a love story?" His tone turned back to acid. Evangeline thought he might even stop talking. To her surprise, he continued. "When we met again, I kissed her." The way he said "I kissed her" was like the way someone might have said they stabbed a person in the back. There was nothing longing or romantic about it, confirming Jax had a misshapen definition of love. And yet somehow, the thought of Jax kissing the princess made something painful wrench inside of Evangeline. "Did you kiss her because you thought that she was your true love?" "No, I needed something from her, and I told her that my kiss would kill her unless she got me what I wanted." "Wait, are you saying that your kiss isn't deadly if you don't want it to be?" "Careful, little fox. You sound curious. But you shouldn't be." Jack stopped pacing and drummed his long fingers against the iron gate, tapping a staccato sound. I lied to Donatello. My kiss is always deadly. I slowed her heart so that it didn't kill her immediately, but it should have ended her life in a matter of days, whether or not she did what I wanted. Then why didn't she die? Probably because my heart started beating, Jack said flippantly, as if there was a small detail that could have easily been left out of the story, when there were entire stories dedicated to Jack's unbeating heart and the mythical girl that would finally make it beat again, his one true love. Evangeline felt that terribly painful something churning in her side, her once again. Not that the idea of this girl being Jack's true love should have pained her. She didn't even like Jax. She shouldn't have been bothered that another girl had made Jack's heart beat. She should have been happy the princess hadn't died. Maybe Evangeline was just feeling sorry for Jax, because she already knew that the story didn't end well. What happened then? According to stories, she was supposed to be my one true love, Jax confirmed. His voice was mocking, but it didn't hide the pain clipping his words or hardening the edges of his features. Of course, as you probably guessed, that didn't work out. She never forgave me for the first kiss. She fell in love with someone else, and then she stabbed me in the heart with my own knife. Evangeline took a shuddering breath, unable to imagine how such a thing would feel, especially for Jax, whose entire driving force as a fate was to find his one true love. Evangeline could understand that drive. In fact, she understood it far better than she wanted to admit. She wanted to say she never risked killing someone for love, but she had made a deal with Jax that had turned a wedding party to stone, cursed the prince, and ultimately led her here. She kept thinking it was fate or Jax that was toying with her life, but it had been her own questionable choices that had started her own path. When loose, she told herself that she was acting out of love, but she wasn't. Not really. She wasn't making loving choices. She was making compromising choices because she wanted love. Lose wasn't her weakness. Love was. Not even just love, but the idea of it. This way, why parts of Jack's story had twisted so painfully inside her. It wasn't because she wanted Jax. She didn't want Jax. She just wanted someone to want her the way Jax had wanted this girl. And she didn't want it to be because of a spell or a curse. Evangeline wanted a real love, powerful enough to break a spell, which was exactly what Jax wanted too. He leaned his head against the dark iron gate, and Evangeline would forever remember the way he looked just then. He was still indescribably breathtaking, but it was all the tragic beauty of a sky where every single star was falling. His hair was a storm of broken gold. His eyes were a mess of silver and blue. The deadness she'd seen her first night in Valorfell was gone. But now she understood why it had been there. Why he seemed so unable to give comfort or kindness. The girl who was supposed to be his one true love had literally stabbed him in the heart. "I'm sorry Donatello wounded you so badly," Evangeline said, and she meant it. She imagined Jax was probably leaving a few things out, but she believed his hurt was genuine. "Maybe the stories have it wrong, and there's another true love waiting for you." Jax laughed perversely. "Are you saying this because you think you can't be her?" He eyed Evangeline through the bars, gaze boarding and incandescent. "Do you want to kiss me, little fox?" Something new and terrible knotted up inside her. "No, that's not what I'm saying." "You don't sound too sure about that. You might not like me, but I bet you like it if I kissed you." His eyes went to her lips, and the heat that swept across her mouth felt like the beginning of a kiss. "Jax, stop it," she demanded. He didn't really want to kiss her. He was just teasing her to deflect the pain. "I know what you're doing." "I doubt it." He smiled, flashing his dimples as he ran his tongue over the tip of a very sharp and long scissors, looking suddenly thoughtful. "Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to say like this. I rather like this." "You also like daylight," Evangeline reminded him. "I could probably live without the sun if I could trade it for other things." He cocked his head. "I wonder. If I were to become a true vampire, perhaps my kiss wouldn't be fatal anymore." His fangs lengthened. "You could let me bite you, and we could try it out." Another piercing lick of heat, this time right beneath her jaw, and her wrist, and a few other intimate places she'd have never thought anyone would bite. Evangeline blushed from her neck down to her collarbone. "We're not talking about biting," she said hotly. "Then what should we talk about?" Jack's eyes returned to her lips, and more heat slipped between them as they parted. Evangeline sucked in a sharp breath. Maybe she'd been wrong earlier. Maybe he did want to kiss her, but it didn't mean anything. He was clearly still fixated on Princess Donatella, and Lala had said that Jack's curse was his kiss, and there was even a silver of attraction he'd be tempted to kiss. but it didn't mean he possessed any real feelings for the person. "I'm curious," she asked. "If you have the ability to control people, why don't you just use it to make the princess love you?" Jack's taunting smile vanished. "I did." "What happened?" "I think my turn is over," he said sharply. "Your turn now, and I want you to tell me about Luz." Evangeline winced. She really didn't want to discuss Luz now, not after what just happened, and not with Jax, who had teased her about him since the moment she'd met him. "I'd like another question, please." "No. I answered your question, you're answering mine. What do you want to know about Luz? You just saw how the story ends." "Tell me how it started." Jax gave her one corner of a falsely cheerful smile. "Your tale clearly began on better footing than mine. What made you fall so madly in love with him that you were willing to pray to me?" Evangeline took a deep breath. "Stop stalling, little fox, or I might remember how much pain I'm in because all I can think about is tasting your blood." Jack's eyes lowered. The wave of heat attacked her chest directly over her heart, and this time it felt like a bite, not a kiss. "Fine. Luz was there for me when my father died." "This was why you fell in love with him?" "No, I think I fell in love with him before that." She was tempted to say that she loved him the first time she saw him, but Jax would definitely mock her for that. "At first, I thought he was handsome. I still remember the bell outside the shop door rang a full 2 seconds before the first time he walked inside, as if it, too, thought he was special." "Or it was trying to warn you away from him," Jax groaned. "Do you want me to keep going or not?" Jax mimed, sealing his lips. Evangeline doubted it would last, but he surprised her by making a genuine effort to listen politely. She noticed that Jack's knuckles were white from clenching his fist, and his jaw appeared uncomfortably tight. He was struggling more now that he wasn't talking, but he hopped atop one of the stones coffins and sat cross-legged like a child being told a story. Evangeline wondered if she should stay standing in case she needed to run, but maybe it would put him at more ease if she mirrored his lead. Carefully she sat down on the cold, damp ground, giving her tired legs a rest. "I grew up working in my father's curiosity shop. I loved it. It felt more like my home than any other place in the world, but I spent so much time there that I didn't really have close friends outside of it until I met Luz. At first I thought he just liked oddities. Then, one day, he came in and he didn't buy anything. He said he just wanted to see me and he wasn't too proud or afraid to admit it." "And?" Jax prompted. "That was when I knew I loved him." "All he did was tell you he liked you." Jack sounded disappointed. "That was his grand gesture? Haven't any other boys been nice to you?" "Plenty of young men have been nice to me, and Luz made other grand gestures." Jack scolded. "Tell me about these grand gestures." Evangeline squirmed against the cold ground and tried to tuck her legs more comfortably beneath her. Jax would think that every relationship needed some magnificent gesture to validate it. "Not every love needs to make a great story, Jax. The start of my romance with Paul had the makings of an epic love tale, but you saw how badly that ended. So you're saying you'll settle for a boring romance if it ends well?" "Yes, I will gladly take an uneventful happily ever after." Jack smirked. "No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have been happy with Luz, and definitely not forever. The two you're well suited, he's not half as strong as you. He didn't even hesitate before he tried to bite you, and he wouldn't have turned himself to stone to save you." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. There's always a way to break a curse. As soon as you drank from Poison's goblet, it refilled. It didn't stay to explain the rules, but they would have appeared on the side of the cup. Luz could have saved you if he wanted." Evangeline's hands started trembling. No one had told her this. "That doesn't mean anything. Luz was under a love spell from Marisol." "He could have broken it," Jack said bluntly. "If he had really loved you, the spell could have been broken. I've seen it happen." "Stop it, Jax." Evangeline shoved up to her feet. It was bad enough to know that she'd done so much for love. She didn't want to hear that Luz had never really loved her. "I'm not trying to be cruel, little fox. No, Jax, that's exactly what you're doing. It's what you'll always do." It was also what she expected, but she was too tired to take it anymore. She might have more questionable choices for love, but Jax hurt people on purpose, for fun. You know, maybe the real reason Donatella stabbed you in the heart and chose to love someone else wasn't just because of that almost fatal first kiss you gave her. Maybe it was your inability to understand any emotions that were remotely human. Jax flinched. He was quick to cover it, and it was hard to fully see, even with all the torches, but Evangeline would have sworn his cheeks had filled with streaks of color. She felt a stitch of guilt, but she couldn't bring herself to stop.
I bet you ever even apologized for kissing her, and that's probably not even the worst thing you did. I mean, isn't your idea of romance kissing a girl and then waiting to see whether or not she dies? I know the stories say that your kisses are worth dying for, but how can they say it if everybody dies? Who wrote those stories? Did you write them to make yourself feel better? Jax wiped his face of all emotion, slid off the coffin, and stalked up to the bars. You sound jealous. If you think I'm jealous because someone else got to stab you, then you're right. Prove it. She heard the thump of his dagger as it fell on her feet. It was the jeweled one he carried everywhere. So many of the gems were missing, but the knife hilt still glittered in the torchlight, pulsing blue and purple, the color of blood before it was spilled. What am I supposed to do with this? You might want to use it, little fox. The corner of his mouth twitched as he slowly slid his foul hands through the bars of gate and broke the lock in half. It could have been a twig, a piece of paper, or her.